Today we're going to be talking about APA style, which is the reference requirement for this class. A lot of you may be familiar with MLA. Well, forget MLA, it's all about APA now. To do this, we're going to go over several different aspects. We're going to talk about paper guidelines, citing sources, references, and citation machines. You guys have class today, did you figure out?
If he doesn't show up, then I'm assuming we don't have class.
That's probably a pretty good guess there.
Yeah. Unless he's going to set up a webcam broadcast. See who shows up today.
I'd have to use me, I think, to set it up on one side. Well, why don't I give you guys So let's talk about citing your sources. This is for the body of your paper or your outline. And we're going to talk about two different types of ways that we cite: in-text citations and orally cited sources. Include an in-text citation when you refer to, summarize, paraphrase, or quote from another source. For every in-text citation in your paper, there must be a corresponding entry in your reference list. APA in-text citation style uses the author's last name and the year of publication. For example, Kirk, 2019, Kirk, Abbott, 2019, or Kirk, Abbott, and Smith, 2019. You'll notice that the ampersand only comes in between the second to last name and the last name. If you're using a direct quote, include the page number as well. For example, Kirk, 2019, P period, the page number. For sources such as a website or ebooks that have no page numbers, use a paragraph number. A lot of times, especially for this first speech, you may run into different sources that do not have an author or do not have a date. When you do not have the author, the title replaces the author's space and it should be put in quotes. For example, quote, title, comma, quote, and the year of publication. For example, quote, Freddie Mercury, comma, end quote. For the date, if there is no date, you put N period, D period. Orally cited sources is something that you may only have to deal with in this class, in a public speaking class. And as with your in-text citation, you must have the year and author listed orally or in parentheses. When we talk about orally cited sources, we really are trying to break down who said it, why they're credible, and how the audience can retrieve that information. These things may be important, although it does not mean you have to say every aspect of your source for every orally cited source. You get to make that decision. You may want to talk about the year of the information, the authors, the title of the book, article, or documentary, and who published it. So for example, in this first orally cited source, we have the name of the book, we have the year it was written, and we had who wrote it. This is a great orally cited source. But let's compare this to the lower example. In 1974, the prosecutor for the Manson family murders, Vincent Bugliosi, wrote the book Helter Skelter, The True Story of the Manson Murders with Curt Gentry, detailing Manson's first criminal offenses, burglarizing a liquor store, gave Manson the money to rent a room. For the second example, you get a little bit more information, specifically that Vincent Bugliosi was the prosecutor for the Manson family murders. This gives the audience two pieces of information. Number one, it tells the audience that the reporter who said it may be biased. He comes with a specific point of view. And number two, that he was not a casual observer, but that he was intimately involved with the information. As a public speaker, this is how you be a credible public speaker, by giving this information to your audience and letting them make the decision. On the discussion page, go to the discussions for today's lecture and make a comment how we would write up an in-text citation for this article. What about an orally cited source? Write that on the discussion page as well. At the end of your outline, you must always include a reference page. You'll notice it's called a reference page and not a works cited page. We're going to break this down a little bit, but this is basically what it should look like. Every in-text citation must have an entry in the reference page. Let's go over a few items here that seem to cause trouble for students. First, not a works cited page. Second, authors' names are inverted, last name first. Give the last name and initials for all the authors of a particular work, up to and including 7 authors. If the work has more than 7 authors, list the first 6 authors and then use ellipsis after the 6th author's name. After the ellipsis, list the last author's name of the work. Reference list entries should be alphabetized by the last name of the first author of each work. For example, you'll notice that regardless that the second name alphabetically comes before the first name, for example, Butler alphabetically comes before Cummings, it's still listed in the order that they were reported. Keep this format. Finally, while the page is justified to the left, there is an indentation on the second line. All lines after the first line of each entry in your reference list should be indented 1/2 inch from the margin. This is called hanging indentation. Between the second to last and the last author's name is an ampersand. This is similar to the in-text reference. The title is lowercased. Unless, followed by a colon, it should be capitalized, or if it's a proper noun. The name of the journals, the periodicals, or the websites are italicized, including the volume number. But there is no italics on the issue number, nor is there a space between the volume and the issue. For websites, it's rare that you will find the volume or the issue number. OWL Purdue is a wonderful resource for not only APA, but also MLA. You should definitely check it out. Next, we're going to be doing an example. So if you wanted to, you could open up another page to the discussion page and get ready to answer the questions. Using the following information, go ahead and write up a reference. I understand if you're not able to do the italics for the discussion page. If you are, please do them. If not, don't stress it. Notice that I don't have the volume or the issue number, but I didn't let that stop me. What did I capitalize? What didn't I? Notice no hyperlink under the web address. So again, there's a couple of great different examples of resources. You've got apastyle.org. That's the actual source for APA style. As we get into a more electronic and computer-based world, there's always going to be a new something we need to cite. That's the place to go for those. For example, a Twitter feed. How do you cite that? Google Twitter feed APA style, how to cite. It will come up with a pretty good example. You notice there's a lot of different citation machines and ways to make APA easier. I have no problem if you use those, but Citation Machine and EasyBib, I just don't trust. A lot of times I end up using those and they come out wrong. Better to understand the basis of APA so that when you use these machines, you know when they're wrong. Another great place to go is actually Scholar Google or the library itself. If you don't know what Google Scholar is, it's this wonderful program that instead of being a search engine for just anything on the net, which Google is, Google Scholar specifically looks at educational sources. I popped in the book that we were looking up earlier, Helter Skelter, and you'll notice it comes up in one of the first articles done. My little red line there is pointing towards the quotation marks. If you hit that, this box pops up, and you'll notice that there's several different citations. always double check your work. A lot of times this is not correct. However, it's a great place to start. Another place is the Ohlone Library. For example, I went to the ohlonelibrary.edu/library and popped in Helter Skelter. Oh, look, there it is. Real easy, pop on the book. If you're looking for simply scholarly or peer-reviewed journal articles, I suggest that you hit this limit too, but that doesn't really pertain here. On the next page, you'll notice that there's a book, but we also have this wonderful thing called Cite. You'll notice it's underlined in this page, and it actually comes up with all the different citation formats, even some I've never heard of before. Again, double check your work, but I find it's more credible than a citation machine or EasyBib. APA is commonly used to cite sources within the social sciences. However, it's starting to be used more in high schools and colleges. And one of the big reasons is it removes our implicit bias that we may hold against people whose name aren't Anglo-sounding or women's names. This is one of the reasons I'm a big pusher of APA. But again, we talked about APA, we talked about the paper guidelines, double-spaced, Times New Roman, 12-point font. We talked about citing sources. We talked about in-text citations and orally cited sources. We talked about references, and we finally talked about citation machines. Let me know if you guys have any questions.